Lotus 7. The Lotus 7 is a small, simple, lightweight two-seater open-top sports car produced by the British manufacturer Lotus Cars, initially called Lotus Engineering, between 1957 and 1972. It was designed by Lotus founder Colin Chapman and has been considered the embodiment of the Lotus philosophy of performance through low weight and simplicity. The original model was highly successful with more than 2,500 cars sold, due to its attraction as a road-legal car that could be used for clubman racing. After Lotus ended production of the 7, Caterham bought the rights, and today Caterham makes both kits and fully assembled cars based on the original design known as the Caterham 7. The Lotus 7 design has spawned a host of imitations on the kit car market, generally called 7s or 7esque roadsters. The Lotus 7 was launched in 1957 to replace the Mark V as the entry-level Lotus model. The 7 name was left over from a model that was abandoned by Lotus, which would have been a Riley-engined single-seater that Lotus intended to enter into the Formula 2 in 1952 or 1953. However, the car was completed around Chapman's chassis as a sports car by its backers and christened the Clearmonte Special. Externally similar to Chapman's earlier Lotus Mark V, but with a different tubular frame similar to the Lotus 11, the 7 was powered by a 40 bhp, 30 kilowatts, 41 PS, Ford side valve 1172 cc inline-4 engine. It was used both on the road and for club racing, 750 Motor Club in the UK. The Lotus 7S2 followed in 1960 and was supplemented by the Lotus Super 7S2 from 1961. The Super 7 initially used the larger Cosworth modified 1,340cc Ford Classic engine, and later examples were fitted with 1,498cc or 1,599cc engines. The 7S3 was released in 1968. In 1970, Lotus radically changed the shape of the car to create the slightly more conventional size Series 4, S4, with a squarer fiberglass shell replacing most of the aluminium bodywork. It also offered some luxuries as standard, such as an internal heater matrix. Between 1970 and 1975, following a representation agreement, Lotus Argentina obtained the license to manufacture the Lotus 7 in Argentina. This production reached approximately 51 units. These vehicles were not replicas but built under license and branded as Lotuses. Under the purchase tax system of the time, cars supplied as a kit did not attract the tax surcharge that would apply if sold in assembled form. Tax rules specified assembly instructions could not be included. However, once the UK joined the EEC on January 1, 1973, the VAT system was adopted instead, so the tax advantage of the kit-built Lotus 7 came to an end. In 1973, Lotus decided to shed fully its British tax system-inspired kit car image. As part of this plan, it sold the rights to the 7 to its only remaining agents, Caterham Cars in England and Steel Brothers Limited in New Zealand. Caterham ran out of the Lotus Series 4 kits in the early 1970s. When this occurred, and in accordance with their agreement with Lotus, Caterham introduced its own brand version of the Series 3. They have been manufacturing the car ever since as the Caterham 7. Steel Brothers Limited in Christchurch, New Zealand, assembled Lotus 7 Series 4s until March 1979, when the last of the 95 kits provided by Lotus was used up. Steel Brothers had a much wider range of factory options than the UK models, with carpet, center console, glove box, radio, window washer and hardtop. Sold largely to competition enthusiasts, the NZ cars also had engine modifications, close ratio gears, and adjustable suspension as factory options. As such, they were very successful in local racing. With officially licensed production stopping in 1979, the last Lotus badged 7, a Series 4, was therefore produced in New Zealand. Steel Brothers Limited attempted to make a wider, modernized version of the Series 4, the Lotus Super 907, using the twin-cam Lotus 907 engine. In the spring of 1978 it was announced that this was to be sold in the United States, but the American importer had no funds and the project came to naught. The single-finished Super 907 was moved from New Zealand to the United States in 2010 to undergo a full restoration. A car with a tuned Ford 1172cc engine and close-ratio gearbox was tested by the British magazine The Motor in 1958. It was found to have a top speed of 80.4 miles per hour, 129.4 kilometers per hour, could accelerate from 0 to 60 miles per hour, 97 kilometers per hour, in 6.2 seconds, and had a fuel consumption of 31.0 miles per imperial gallon, 9.1 liters/100 kilometers, 25.8 miles per gallon US. The test car cost £1,157 including taxes of £386. They commented that car could be bought in component form and then it would have cost £399 for the parts from Lotus, £100 for the Ford engine and gearbox and £27 for the BMC rear axle. A 7's top speed greatly depends upon the body configuration, engine power and gearing. Early models with low-powered engines had difficulty exceeding 90 miles per hour, 140 kilometers per hour, although a race-prepared 7 was clocked at 127 miles per hour, 204 kilometers per hour, whilst driven by Brauusk Niemann through a speed trap at the 1962 Natal Grand Prix. In addition, clamshell-style wings tend to create drag and generate lift at higher speeds. Cycle wings help alleviate this tendency, and low-height Brooklyn Aero screens or the lighter Perspex variants that can replace the windscreen help improve top-end speed. 7s do suffer from front-end lift at high speed. The nose creates more lift and downforce at speeds over around 70 miles per hour, 110 kilometers per hour, although retrofitted winglets may counter this. Nearly all 7s, due to their extremely light weight, around 10 hundredweight, 500 kilograms, have excellent acceleration, especially up to 70 miles per hour, 110 kilometers per hour, depending on power. The original late 1950s 7s could beat most contemporary saloon cars, and by the early 1960s, with improved Ford Cosworth engines could take on most high-performance sports cars with 0 to 60 miles per hour time in the low 7 seconds. The less powerful early models had drum brakes all round, in common with most road cars of the time. Later models had front disc brakes. Physics favors small cars in braking and 7s have excellent stopping distances, but one of the effects of lightweight and powerful, non-ABS, brakes is the tendency to lock up, especially at the front under strong braking. The highest part of the car is about 3 feet, 900 millimeters, from the road, and it has a cloth top and side curtains with plastic back and side windows. The supports for the top and the windshield frame are aluminum. The lower chassis tubes are 5 inches, 127 millimeters, from the road, while the wet sump, bell housing, and one chassis tube are lower, meaning the center of gravity is very low. The front, rear weight distribution is nearly equal, and the lack of a boot and small petrol tank assure that it remains fairly constant. It is, however, more front-heavy than more modern high-performance cars. In the original 7, the front lower A-arm, or wishbone, of the double wishbone suspension is traditional, but for the purpose of reducing weight, the upper suspension integrated an anti-roll, anti-sway, bar into a horizontal suspension arm. This approach formed a pseudo-wishbone which was semi-independent in nature. This approach worked well with early cross-ply tires, but with later radials, the configuration seriously affected its adjustability. For the rear suspension, Lotus originally used a live axle, or solid axle. This approach was very cost-effective since most production saloon cars up to the 1980s used these components. A mixture of Ford and Austin components were used. One disadvantage of live axles is higher unsprung weight, affecting handling and ride on rough surfaces. In general, cars with non-optimized aerodynamics tend to be free of adverse aerodynamic effects on handling, but the front wheel arches, of all but the Series I, cause lift at high speeds. Like the good straight-line performance, the car's nimble handling is limited in the speed range, and this is not usually important in a car intended for public roads. While the car's frontal area is small, The Lotus 7 has a drag coefficient among the highest of any known production car, ranging from 0.65 to 0.75, depending on the bodywork. Additionally, the clamshell front wings develop lift. This is accentuated by the slight natural lift caused by rotating wheels. Consequently, 7s has exhibited understeer at high speeds. The rack and pinion steering provide a minimum of play and friction. The lightweight assures light steering without power assistance, even with very large tires. The ratio is quick. Like racing cars of the time and the equally respected and more expensive Mercedes-Benz 300 SL Coupe, it had a multi-tube space frame with high sides to allow a stiffer frame, longer lever arm. However, the Series 2 and other road versions had simpler frames than the more race-oriented Series I. It is a stressed skin construction, in which the flat aluminum body panels, and especially the floor, stiffen and effectively triangulate the largely rectangular steel tubular frame structure. This gives a rigid frame with few tubes and very little body weight that does not contribute to the frame's stiffness. The flat panels avoid difficulties in shaping aluminum sheet into smooth compound curves. On the downside, it does not allow attractive curves or streamlining. The Series 1.7 usually use the English Ford side valve, L-head or flathead, engine with 49 horsepower, 37 kilowatts, although both BMC Series A and FWA-SOHC Coventry Climax engines could be fitted. The Series 2 typically used Ford Kent engines of 1340cc or 1500cc. These were often Cosworth modified. The Cosworth 1340cc Super 7 delivered 85 bhp, 63 kilowatts, 86 PS, and the 1500cc Super 7 1500 inches 105 bhp, 78 kilowatts, 106 PS. Some late S2 and most S37s were fitted with a later cross-flow Kent engine of 1599cc. A limited number of cars use the Lotus twin-cam engine. The S47 could be supplied with 1298 or 1599cc Kent engines or the twin-cam. The Lotus 7 was designed with racing in mind, and lightness was of primary concern to Chapman. A front-mounted engine driving the rear wheels, a similar layout to most cars of the day, and a very lightweight steel space frame was covered with unstressed aluminum panel bodywork. The body panels were mainly flat to avoid the expense of more elaborate curved bodywork, and the simple cloth-lined plastic doors were hinged from the windscreen. The nose cone and wheel arches were originally aluminum parts, but these were replaced in the later S2 and S3 models with painted or self-colored fiberglass. Early Lotus 7s weighed around 1,100 pounds, 1000 weight/500 kilograms. Although the weight crept upward as production progressed, it remained remarkably low for a production car of over a liter displacement. Broken off splines from the standard companion estate car, station wagon, half axles of the Lotus 7 Series 2. The front was by arms and coil springs with an anti-roll bar serving as the front half of the top A-arm. The rear had trailing arms, a triangular center locating member, and a solid rear axle. The geometry and high, relative to total, unsprung weight gave it some bump steer, which owners sometimes treated by moving the supports forward and lengthening the trailing arms. A model that was sold in the US had independent rear suspension and a Coventry Climax engine. The Series 2 had problems with its standard companion estate car rear axle and differential. This was later solved on the Series 3 with a Ford Cortina rear end. The tubular spaced frame chassis suffered from rust, especially from the inside, which would lead to its sudden and unexpected collapse.